Well, thank you very much for the invitation to come here. That was quite a generous introduction. My name is Giday, WoldeGabriel, and I live in New Mexico, not far from Colorado here. Before I start my talk, I would like to talk a little bit about my background, where I came from, how I started, and so again, Ethiopia, and then the village that I grew up, Maimisham, about 40 kilometers outside Adwa, and my school here, Christ School of Maimisham. So that's where I started. I had a humble beginning. Growing up in Tigray was not easy. In the 50s, drought, locust, all kinds of problems, but luckily enough, I managed. And of course, with time, this is where I'm at today, at Los Alamos National Laboratory. For those of you that don't know what Los Alamos is, it's a Department of Energy Research Center, one of the largest research centers in the world. So I have been there for the last 25 years. And in my spare time, I've had the opportunity for the last 20 years to go back every year to Ethiopia, soon after the EPRDF took over. And I've been conducting geological and paleoanthropological. Paleoanthropology is the study of human origins and culture. So as a geologist, I've been helping many researchers in Ethiopia, a lot of young Ethiopians, as well as American colleagues, European colleagues. So I will be talking a little bit about RD. This is a fossil that was discovered in 1994 by Dr. Johannes Haile Selassie, another Tigrayan, who is the head of anthropology at the Cleveland Natural History Museum in Ohio. So the title here is Ethiopia, the Cradle of Humanity, the beginning of human beings. This is not just bragging, it's actually a reality based on what we have found to date. And this is Dr. Zarasanna is here with us, and he will be talking also on his discoveries, but there are many young Ethiopians, younger than me, the next generation, that have found a lot of interesting stuff, making Ethiopia practically the leader about human origins than any other place in the world today. My study area is called the Middle Awash here in the Afar region of Ethiopia. And I have several fossil discoveries here, about 7 species ranging in age from 100,000 to about 6 million years. So we have the oldest and the youngest discoveries. And so when we go back in time, when things are much older, of course, we don't discover that many fossils, but still we find enough diagnostic samples to identify species. So starting here at 5.8 million, it's called Ardipithecus kadaba. So after the Afar name, kadaba means a great-great-grandfather. At 5.8, and then RD right here at 4.4, and then Homo erectus right here, 1 million, Garhi at 2.5 million. This was discovered before my time in 1978. I was still in undergraduate geology at Addis Ababa University, but it was discovered in the same area. So in this one particular area, we have found these 7 species. So there is no other place in the world today that has provided this kind of resources in one locality. And so Dr. Zarasanna's discovery is outside this area, and so that makes it really quite a unique place in the world today. So what I will be doing here is I will just take you through the process of discovery, excavation, and then the publications of RD and what RD looked like when it was being discovered in the Afar region. So this is the map of the world here, Africa here, the rift system here, so the Middle Awash, Hadar, and the other place like Dikika where Dr. Zarasanna leads another project are found here in the Afar region. But there are fossils also in other parts of the world. So this is a place called Aramis in the Middle Awash region of Ethiopia. So this is a satellite image. There is a lake here. The Awash River is flowing into the Afar region northwards. So this is an area about 10 miles, 10 kilometers by about 10 kilometers. And RD was discovered here. This is what it looks like in the area today. Another picture in the same section. And then another one here. There is too much light here, probably. It's very hard to see the images, but anyway. So here is Dr. Johannes Haile Selassie in 1994. He saw a small fragment of a bone, a small piece of rock, which actually looked like a rock, but it happened to be a bone from a finger. Again, these are researchers digging and excavating bones. This is the lower jaw of RD as it was coming from the ground. You can see all the teeth here, the bones fragmented. This is a thumb bone, this bone here. This is a leg bone from here. These are fragments from the skull, and this is at 4.4 million years. Most of the bones were shipped to Addis because there was no time to clean them in the field. And then ultimately, these are the different bones that were discovered and published in 2009. And then this is the image that was projected based on the bones that were discovered there. And so this is RD, the oldest partial skeleton ever found in the world. So these are most of the skeletal parts. And so what's important about RD? The brain size was practically small. Our modern human being brain size is about 12 to 1400 cc. So this was very small, very primitive. Oops, sorry. Small teeth, canine teeth. The cheek teeth here, the bones, the teeth here were designed for chewing plants and meat. The pelvis was sort of a typical of someone that was walking upright like modern humans at 4.4 million. As you can see, the arms were long and the fingers very long. The thumb was small, short, because these animals were climbing trees at night and sometimes walking on the ground. You can see the toe bone is also opposable. It's not like us, but at 4.4 million, it walked upright like us, but it has different unique bone formations. So RD was quite different from Lucy. Lucy is much, much younger at 3.2 million. This is older by almost 1.2 million. And then RD was different from chimpanzees, gorillas, or monkeys at 4.4 million years. Another important observation, the teeth, these front teeth here, looked like, at least not like chimpanzees or gorillas or monkeys, was closer to modern humans at 4.4 million. And there was an indication that from the shape of the teeth that there was a cooperative living among the families of RD. And they were walking upright, and it was clear from the evidence that the males provided food to the females, and there is an indication that, at least a speculation, but at night they were sleeping on trees. During the day, the men were, at least the males, were collecting food and providing to the females. So they believe, at least the paleontologists believe, there was a communal system at 4.4 million years. what kind of environment did RD live in? I mean, the Afar Depression is very dry, hot today, but at 4.4 million, it was a very wet, humid environment, much higher elevation, and certainly woodland forest, not a grassland or dry place like today. And then, of course, there were a lot of rivers flowing through the area. What's our evidence? We have direct evidence as well as indirect evidence. The direct evidence is the shape of the teeth. We have what we call isotopes. What people do is they take fragments of the tooth enamel and they do analysis. Our teeth actually registers or records what kind of food, what kind of water we drink today. So in the US today, people take hair or teeth fragments, and they know exactly which part of the United States these people live, just from the water they drink and from the food they eat. They do this as a forensic studies today when they find someone dead and they don't know where they came from or who their relatives are. They take hair and teeth and other bone parts, and they can find out exactly where this person came from in the United States. We do the same technique for fossils. Just from the teeth, we know what kind of food they ate, what kind of environment they lived. And so these are very helpful scientific methods that help us to understand what the environment was like. And then, of course, the shape of the teeth and the muscle attachments of the bones. Because we have a lot of bones, it's very easy, again, to understand what the morphology or the skeletal shape and the muscle attachments were like. And then in terms of indirect evidence, at Aramis, where RD was found, we collected over 6,000 fossils of other animals. And these fossil animals were characterized, some as browsers that ate leaves, some as grazers that depended on grass. And so most of the animals that were associated with RD were actually browsers, and that's what I'm going to show in the next slides. But these are fossil remains of plants, seeds from a particular tree that exists today in South Africa. And these are scanning electron microscope images of trees. I mean, petrified trees or fossil trees that tell us that this was a forest at one time. We have also fossils of snails. I mean, snails like to live in a wet environment. And so there is a nest here and a lot of different types of snails. Again, this was an indication that RD lived in a wet environment based on the fossils that we find associated with these animals. These are bar graphs. The blue shows animals that ate leaves, not grasses. All these other indicators are animals that ate grass. And so you can see, I don't know if you can read it here, but about more than 80% of the animals that we discovered with RD actually ate plant materials, not grass. And so this tells us there was a lot of forest in the area that the animals depended on. And so again, this tells us RD lived in a forest with full of trees, a lot of trees in a wet environment rather than in an open grassland or a savanna grassland, like many others suggested. The different animals that we found, these are like kudus or antelopes. You can see about 38%. Here, colobus monkey, a lot of them. And then the grass-eating animals actually represent a fraction of the other animals. Again, this was an indirect evidence that RD lived actually in a forest with animals that depended on plants, on trees for its living. These are the kind of birds that were collected again in the area. Everything is collected when we find something with a fossil. We try to collect all kinds of information, birds, snails, snakes, anything. So in this case, the number of birds, again, about 36% of these birds were made up of parrots. Parrots like to have trees. They like big trees instead of grasses. We have also peacocks at 4.4 million. So the dominant animals, like more than 50%, were animals that like to live on trees rather than grasslands. The other animals that like grass area, like partridge, guinea fowl, and many other birds of prey actually were kind of a fraction of the major animals here. Again, this is another evidence that RD actually lived in a forest rather than a grassland. Other source of evidence, this is a list of different kind of animals. So we took the teeth enamel again and tried to understand what the composition was, what kind of plants or what kind of grass or what were they eating 4.4 million years ago. You can see most of the animals that we analyzed here, some had lived in a grassland. So the teeth enamel showed a grassland without a lot of forest. RD and some of the others actually plotted in a forest environment. And so again, this is another independent evidence that RD indeed lived in a forest. So in the last 20 years, it's been 20 years for me participating in this work. And so there are a lot of publications that we do. The price of our research is find the fossil, describe it, and then publish it in very prominent journals. There was a publication by an Ethiopian and another American researcher. This is another book that Dr. Johannes and I edited together about the 5.8 million year old fossil. So in a summary, this is what we have. This is a time scale from 6 million to the present. And so these are the number of fossils that we have discovered in this one particular place called Middle Awash. So I've been participating in this research again on my spare time. This is not my regular job. Every year I take about 6 weeks of my time sometimes, and then collaborate with this international group of researchers from the United States, France, Belgium, Turkey, and of course, a number of Ethiopians. And so we've been doing this for the last 20 years, and of course, the Ethiopian government has been very key to all this success. Without the support of the Ethiopian government, and then in particular the Afar people, it would be practically impossible to go out there and do this research continuously for the last 20 years. So really, the credit goes to the Ethiopian federal government and the Afar people for this really successful work. And the important thing is Ethiopia in the last 20 years has progressed not only in human paleontology discoveries, but also I'm sure many of you have gone back and seen the kind of development that's happening today in Ethiopia. So it's all rounded, from human origins research to dam building, to highway construction, to city construction, healthcare, education, you name it. So we are very proud, very, very proud to be part of this progressive government, and I would like to invite Dr. Zarasanai to continue on this story, but thank you for your attention.